Lewis Hamilton, in a recent interview, expressed doubts that he'd been having over the past year in F1 about whether or not he could still hang with the current crop of talent. You know, most notably the now recently crowned three-time world champion in Max Verstappen, all the way through to Lando Norris in the recently rapid McLaren, and even his teammate George Russell, who he was beaten in 2022 by. But let's not forget, he has come close to wins over the past couple of years as well. Most notably in the race in Austin recently, where, to be honest, all weekend he was pretty rapid in a car that had no right being that quick. And he was about, 2 or 3 seconds off Max by the end, and probably, with the right pit stop call from Mercedes, would have won that race. And you also have to take in that the results really that he's had have come from the frustrations that have come with the car. I mean, the W13 and the W14 that Mercedes have produced over the past 2 seasons, well, in comparison to their usual high standards, I mean, let's not forget Mercedes won 8 consecutive Constructors' Championships. These 2 cars that they've produced over the past 2 years have been nothing short of rubbish. And to be fair, with the start of the 2022 season, when they did the first practices in that car, especially in that new concept that they had, it was clear from the off that the car just wasn't going to work. So the fact that they held on to that concept and went on through all of 2022 and all of 2023 with pretty much the same concept shows you that they were maybe a bit more stubborn than they needed to be. And in the interview, Hamilton even went as far to say as at the end of the 2022 season, he requested changes to that car. And when he got in that car in 2023, it was clear to him that no changes that he had requested anyway had been made. Which I can only imagine gave him a lot of frustration on top of all the frustration he already had. I mean, when you are the leader of the team, because let's be honest, out of him and George Russell, he pretty much is the leader. He's a 7-time world champion. He's been with that team for how long now? And he will know what he needs to get the best out of that car. And if there's certain changes he's requested, for me, why wouldn't you listen to him and try and give him that? And he even went to say in the interview that he knew as soon as he sat in that 2023 car that it was going to be a long year. And I'm pretty sure George on the other side of the garage was feeling the same way as well. He does go on to say that he felt a bit more positive through this year and trying to maximise as much as possible. And you can see in moments the Mercedes did get close. Like I mentioned before, Austin, he was pretty close to the win there. You know, he had other moments where he was pretty close to the guys in front. And, you know, with a couple of things maybe going his way, he could have had a win. And that probably would have helped him keep that confidence and maybe get rid of those doubts entirely. But to go back to sort of the original question of the video, I guess, and the title of this video, does Lewis Hamilton still have it? And my answer is absolutely he does. He drove 15 podiums in the past 2 years in a car that had no right being anywhere near the podium. He managed to drag himself into a fight for second in 2023 in the championship over Sergio Perez. Heading into the last couple of races, obviously the bit of form towards the end of the season was a bit concerning with the car, but again, he fought Sergio Perez, who was in much superior machinery in that Red Bull that had no right being in a fight for second position, with a Mercedes car that basically, quite frankly, couldn't lace its boots up in comparison to that Red Bull car. And Hamilton was able to take it right down to the wire into the last couple of races of the season. You aren't a good racing driver if you can do that. If you can take a much inferior piece of machinery and still push the limits on a much better car, you aren't just a great racing driver, you are one of the best racing drivers on the grid. And for me, despite the car not being where it is, Hamilton is 100% still that driver that I've idolized since I was a kid, that a lot of you maybe watching this video will have idolized since you were kids as well, or maybe are idolizing as kids now, I don't know. Obviously, let me know in the comments, do you think Hamilton still has it, or do you think he is maybe past his best now and maybe on a decline? And there's also the evidence that, you know, just because he's had a couple of bad seasons in a bad car doesn't mean that that can't change. Mercedes are obviously changing concept for 2024, and that may well prove to be what rejuvenates Hamilton's career. I mean, I think if we should point to anyone for evidence of being in poor cars for a long time and then being put into a better car shows that you can still have it is Fernando Alonso. Look at what the season start he had with Aston Martin. Of course, it tailed off in the middle and towards the back end, but again, I don't think anyone was thinking that's Fernando's fault. And I think that's what we should be looking like for Lewis right now. As soon as he gets a good car under his belt, you know for a fact he'll be fighting at the front and fighting for even more podiums than he's already had in the past 2 years. He's had 103 race wins and 197 podiums. 197 podiums. He's been in over 300 races in his F1 career. That's over half of his races he's been on the podium. That's crazy. Those are crazy numbers. And he's going to improve that next year. Now, don't get me wrong. It's probably going to take a huge drop of the ball from Red Bull to get Hamilton anywhere near a championship contention. But I don't think it's out of the realms of possibility that Red Bull are going to drop the ball a couple of times over races next year and Hamilton will have a sniff at a race win again. I just think he's too good not to win at least a race again in the next season or so. Whether he wins another championship, I think that's all down to Red Bull. It's down not just down to Red Bull. It's down to two things. It's down to how much do Red Bull decline, or have they hit a ceiling in their car over the next year or two, and how much can Mercedes jump up in the next year or so to get that car up to at least being competitive with that Red Bull. But like I say, if Red Bull somehow do drop the ball at any point, I heavily suspect they won't. But if they do, if there's one driver I would back to take advantage of them dropping the ball, it's Lewis Hamilton, especially if he gets that right machinery under him. A quick sidebar before I finish the video. It is a nice thing to hear that, you know, these machines that we call F1 drivers do have some moments of doubt like the rest of us. I mean, you look at guys like Hamilton, like I said before, 103 race wins and 197 podiums, and, you know, we all idolize them. You know, they're our heroes. The guys are at the top of the game. We idolize these guys since we were younger, and really, it's uncommon to hear people be so open and frank about their emotions, especially sports people. Like, you don't generally get that. So it's great to hear that, you know, these guys are human and they have their doubts and they have these things. Even a 7-time world champion like Hamilton does have them. And I know people will be thinking, well, Max Verstappen doesn't show that and this, that, and the other. It's like, but Max Verstappen's still in his mid-20s. He's a 3-time world champion. He's in the prime of his career, which could go on for another 10 years. Let's not get wrong. But, you know, Lewis has probably got that experience that maybe a lot of the other drivers don't have on the grid and is able to talk about these things a bit more freely. So, yeah, it's just nice to see that, you know, they are human and they are like us and doubts do creep in. But as always, folks, if you have enjoyed the video, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. I've been Grimmy. This is Taking the Pits F1, and I'll see you on the next one.